Hello, everybody. Welcome back to No Trailers Allowed, my movie and streaming show podcast where I do not watch trailers beforehand. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find more episodes on my website, superjersh.com. You can get this podcast early and ad-free and support me by visiting patreon.com/superjersh. You can find my No Trailers Allowed content social medias online on Twitter at NoTrailersPod and on Instagram at NoTrailersAllowed. You can email me to be a part of the show with your questions, comments, or suggestions by using the email address notrailersallowed@gmail.com. I do have a free public Discord as well, and I have a new No Trailers Allowed dedicated movie discussion channel, so check out the Discord if you're new. This is on YouTube as well, so if you are listening to this podcast on Spotify or iTunes or on Patreon, please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to help it grow as well. I have a link to that channel in the description. I do want to remind folks here that I do have a music channel as well, youtube.com/superjersh. If you want to hear my thoughts on music and music reactions. Also have a video game YouTube channel, and I stream live on twitch.tv/jershplays. I want to do a quick Patreon shout out. I want to welcome new patrons Thomas, Egor, and Adrian. I want to thank Patreon executive producers Mirrors, Triss, I Love Manatees, and Daryl for your long-time support. And thank you as well, legendary Patreon producer Zelbinian. As I said a moment ago, we are on Spotify and iTunes as well. I do sincerely dislike Spotify. I've almost never liked Spotify, and especially at the time of this recording of recent events, there's reason even less to like Spotify. So if we're lucky, it will die, and then you can listen to this other places. But yeah, rate and subscribe where you can while they exist. On this episode, I'm going to talk about Last Night in Soho. Before I get into discussing the latest movie from Edgar Wright, I felt like I should share kind of where I am with the majority of his films, or at least the bigger movies that most people associate with him. So he had this sort of like Cornetto trilogy that he calls it, with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and The World's End, and then he had Scott Pilgrim and Baby Driver, and that's a lot of the movies. He was attached to Ant-Man for some time but didn't end up making it, and now recently, 4 or 5 years since his last movie, Baby Driver, we finally get Last Night in Soho. I absolutely love Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. I think they're brilliant movies. They're super fun. They're like almost infinitely rewatchable for the dialogue, the character performances, the camera work, just the high energy and fast pace, wit and cleverness of both of those movies. I think they're really great. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost have incredible chemistry to watch in both of those movies for different reasons and similar reasons. The World's End I liked less. I watched it once and don't remember a lot of it. Yeah, that's the weaker of those three movies. For Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I really loved that movie. I like watched it randomly on HBO one night, not knowing anything about it, not knowing it was based on, like, having never seen a trailer, surprise, or knowing that it was based on some sort of graphic novel property or video game world. I saw gaming references, which caught my attention, and it was like only after the movie was done that I saw that it was directed by Edgar Wright and whatever. See, I love Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I like the music in it. Talk about a cast. Like, that movie came out in like 2009 or 2010, and like 9 or 10 characters deep in that movie, they like all became kind of stars in their own right, even if they had like small supporting bits in that movie. So it's kind of crazy. So love Scott Pilgrim. Baby Driver, I really didn't like. I was really disappointed in it, to be honest. That was definitely a movie that was like style over substance. It kind of was meant to be a sort of like 2 hour long music video where it really was just like syncing up video images with music as far as like the car chase and the gun fights and stuff like that. And so for the style of it and the technical prowess of it to pull that off and put all that together and have it work, and the editing that and timing that all must have taken, I really appreciated and respected that aspect. But it's not a movie that I've ever felt compelled to revisit, and that's aside from the real world implications of the alleged allegations against Kevin Spacey and Ansel, whatever, the kid that plays the Baby Driver character. He had some, I heard online, some allegations against him. I don't know. I don't follow it closely. I like am vaguely aware of those types of things, but I try to focus on like the movies. Anyway, yeah, which kind of brings me to Last Night in Soho, which is a movie that I knew nothing about. I just knew that when it was first announced, I guess a couple of years ago, Edgar Wright's making a new movie. It's called Last Night in Soho. It's going to have Anya Taylor-Joy in it. I don't remember if The Queen's Gambit had come out and was a thing at that time. She had already sort of established a name for herself with The Witch and with Split. So I don't know if, again, The Queen's Gambit was on that radar as well, but I knew that she was attached. And so I went radio silent on it. I muted words about it. I didn't watch trailers about it. It didn't have... Well, when it came out theatrically, I think we were still in a pretty bad part of the pandemic. I don't remember if even a vaccine was available yet, which, thank you, science, for the vaccine. Get vaccinated if you haven't already. I'm double vaccinated and boosted, and, I'm alive. Your chances are lower if you don't get vaccinated. Anyway, so I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was about. Anyway, so I didn't go see it in theaters because of the pandemic, and also I think when I did finally think I would go to the theater for it, when I tried to find it in my area, it already wasn't playing. It did not have a long playing time in theaters. So it recently, at the time of this recording, I think within the last week or two, became available on streaming and maybe even for purchase now. I don't know. I know when they release them on the streaming, sometimes that it's just for rent. It's just for early access rent. This one, you could purchase it digitally now, and I think I did see an advertisement recently that it is purchasable on 4K Blu-ray as well. So because of that, I am going to talk full spoilers about Last Night in Soho. It's been out. It was released in theaters several months ago. It's been available on digital for several weeks now. So if you want to hear my thoughts and discussion on it, it is going to be full spoilers. I will say briefly, I have mixed feelings on the movie. I do recommend watching it. It was definitely worth the rent. I'm glad that I saw it because there were some interesting things that will stick with me that I'll talk about later, I suppose. But overall, I felt like it was kind of a mixed bag. So I still don't think he has topped kind of his best work, which is Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So to talk about kind of what this movie is about, it is about a young girl named Ellie, who is a small town girl living in a lonely world, taking the midnight train, going anywhere. She wants to become a fashion designer and gets accepted to a fashion school in London. So she becomes, it's a very fish out of water story where this innocent girl from the countryside gets thrust into the city and the nightlife there and drugs and alcohol and danger and older men chasing after her because of her beauty. And I really felt like the first 30 or 40 minutes of this movie was like very strong. I was kind of captivated by her character and her innocence. They hinted at some sort of like horror movie stuff where she sees ghosts, she sees her mom in the mirror, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be cool. And it was very slick. Edgar Wright, that's a weird, I guess, kind of descriptor, but Edgar Wright makes slick movies. Like, he really thinks about the camera work. I know, Like, I remember in Shaun of the Dead, there was a special feature where they literally went over the storyboards for the entire movie. Like, him and Simon Pegg in a 30-minute video, they show you like 100 giant whiteboard black marker drawings because they had pre-vised everything about how they visualized that movie. And even for the Grindhouse trailer "Don't" that Edgar Wright directed for the Grindhouse double feature by Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. Even for that short 2.5 minute fictional trailer, which also had Nick Frost in it, he storyboarded the hell out of that too. I remember. So he knows that film is a visual medium, and he thinks about the visuals, and the camera work never disappoints. There are fast, smooth, interesting movements, fun framing, and interesting lighting and wardrobes. Like, the look of the movies are never the problem. It's really, for me, like, if I don't get into an Edgar Wright movie, it's the substance, it's the content of it, it's maybe the dialogue or the character choices or the plot or lack of plot if it's just about the Flash, right? Anyway, so I thought the first act of the movie was pretty strong, introducing the main character. I like really felt for her. I identified with her. For me, my own personal life, like, my personal story really mimicked that. I came from a small town of 2,000 people, and a month out of high school, I moved to the big city, 2,000 miles away from everything I'd ever known, and lived in what I'll say Phoenix. It wasn't exactly Phoenix, but it was different suburbs in and around Phoenix, and it was scary, and it was nerve-wracking and new, and I really identified with that. And I think a lot of people, even if it's not, I mean, I specifically identified with it from small town to metropolis and being hit with real life. And even if it's not that exact one-to-one like I had, I think a lot of people can relate to going from the world that you know or have known your entire life, growing up and being introduced to the grander world and the other points of view and people that exist in it. Her roommate, she had a real just shitty roommates who you thought was going to be really nice for like just a moment, and then the movie very quickly lets you know she's not going to be nice. She's very narcissistic and competitive, and talks bad about you behind your back. And one of the things that I wished had been, that's one of the things that I wish had been paid off in the movie, is kind of their conflict, their introduction, their power dynamic. I really had kind of hoped, as the story was progressing, I thought, here's this meek, small town character who's going into this dream of a flashback time traveling to the 60s, and she's identifying with this character named Sandy, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. And I thought, through Sandy, who seemed to be this confident, empowered, talented, impressive figure, almost like a role model for Ellie. Yeah, Ellie. I keep Eloise, right? Yeah, Ellie. It's funny. That maybe she would, then become empowered herself, and there would be a role reversal and kind of a comeuppance for the shitty roommate. But that didn't. That kind of gets lost along the way because, I don't know, like, the people that you're supposed to root for and character motivations and the type of people that you think are the heroes and the villains in the movie switch so much that it's like, who am I supposed to get behind? Who am I supposed to root for at all besides Ellie? Like, Ellie, I think was a great character, easily the strongest character, which is good because that's your protagonist. And it was really easy for me to root for her, and I felt for her. And that performance was really strong. It asked a lot out of that actor, and it was really believable. The small townness, the changing your hairstyle and changing how you dress and finding your confidence in your design class, all really came through. And then the manicness and the anxiety and the fear and the sadness all came through as things started to escalate throughout the movie. I really loved the wardrobe and the character things that her character went through. A lot of good movies, and what I try to replicate in the movies that I had made is this visual transformation of your characters, whether it's just the main character or even all of the side supporting characters as well. And when you think about where she started, this innocent, hair tight girl in her small bedroom, alone with her ghost mom, wearing newspaper for a dress, to blonde, black, mascara ghost face crying in the rain, bloody nose, gonna die. Like her character has been through kind of a journey, a character journey. Um, anyway, yeah. So somewhere towards the point of like when it really started to turn into the psychological horror type thriller stuff is when I started to lose a little bit of interest as I was watching. I started to look at the clock and see, because um I kept thinking about conflict and stakes. And I wondered like what is the conflict of this movie? For the first half of the movie, this fish out of water who finds, who gets away from the shitty roommate and finds this basically time travel bedroom in the upstairs of an older woman's home. Uh, there wasn't really a lot of conflict. It was just literally us watching the main character watching other events that happen. You know what I mean? And the events that happened were presumably events that had already occurred. So I just wasn't really sure like what the conflict was from a plot perspective or what the stakes were. Like what is at stake for you right now? I don't know. Like you're just time traveling at night, which is kind of a fun. I mean, it's a fun premise. I feel like there was like a Woody Allen movie from the early 2000s that did something similar to this, where it's like every night. I saw a trailer for it. I didn't watch it. Midnight in Paris, I think, is the movie. Yeah, where it's like every night at midnight you like time travel to someplace else or something like that. And I only saw the trailer for that movie, but I still thought of it because that's what was happening here. I also want to say, like in the spirit of, I didn't watch the trailer beforehand. Just based on the title alone, I thought it was going to be like a one-nighter movie where it was literally about your last night in Soho. Like it was going to be, yeah, like the whole movie was going to take place from, dusk until the morning broke. And it was going to be somebody's last night in Soho that was like a crazy night. But the phrase last night in Soho, as it pertains to the movie, is like every night that she is dreaming and she's like time traveling back to the 60s and seeing Sandy's story, she's she's talking about what she did last night in Soho. So it's always like the previous night, not last final, it's last prior. So that was kind of fun to learn throughout the movie. Excuse me. I thought all the performances, honestly, across the board were really great. The Matt Smith character was, they successfully, to me, kind of romanticized the 60s and made it seem like this place that you absolutely wanted to be and live in. And then as the story of the past unfolded, we found out that she was victimized and turned into a prostitute, basically against her will. Or at least she felt like she had no choice. And how the Matt Smith character went from this like charming, swinging 60s greased haired guy that seemed like a guy everybody would want to know to this really menacing kind of pimp character. I thought that twist and that kind of reveal and change occurred really naturally and really well. Did you know if you support me on patreon.com/superjersh that you can get this podcast early and ad-free? You probably didn't know that because you're listening to this promotion right now, which means you also probably didn't know that there are dozens of hours of Patreon exclusive content over there, like full album music reactions and full movie watch-along commentaries. So head on over to patreon.com/superjersh to help the music and movie discussions continue. But I just feel like the movie is trying to do maybe too much, and I don't know who it wants you to root for, because I totally was on board. I completely sympathized with Ellie and Sandy and their plight, and because of the way that the men were treating the women in the flashbacks and in the present day, I was completely doubtful of the John character, the basically what became Ellie's boyfriend. I just was like sus the entire time. Like, you're going to be an asshole. You're going to end up working. You're going to be like a modern day Matt Smith. I can't remember the Matt Smith character's name. Um, I guess it's Jack. Yeah. I literally just finished the movie like within the last hour. I watched the movie. I looked up some of the cast and credits because I was like, have I seen them before? And then I just literally jumped in to record this. So I don't even know. I don't know what the consensus out there for like reviews or thoughts of this movie are. I just wanted to try to share mine, fresh and honest, and then maybe after this I'll see what other people thought. Um, but uh, and then all the way up to the fact that Sandy is murdered. You like we're really hating these men and seeing these ghost figures, which I thought it was a cool. I actually thought it was a really cool effect. These ghost figures, these faceless men, and how what a lovely name. How repetitive and redundant the shittiness gets, and how demoralizing and depressing it gets. And I feel like everything that we do in life can kind of be uh, reduced to a redundancy. Like if you think of a time, every time you take a shower, every time you brush your teeth, every time you eat a sandwich for lunch, or every time you order a pizza, if you think about all the hundreds of times you've done it over the course of a lifetime, and smash cut it together, it's kind of depressing, And that's not different here. Now, of course, it's even more depressing subject matter with the, you know, wanting to be a singer, wanting to be a performer, and having sincere intentions and having that turned on your head and made to become something that you never dreamed that you would become, is sad. So then, and again, it's funny. So the Terrence Stamp, uh, who instantly right away, I assumed it was Jack. It was Matt Smith. And at first I thought I was clever, and then of course as the movie revealed itself, it specifically wanted you to think that. It was kind of cheap to like have that one half conversation with a police officer that literally never went anywhere else. It's like it literally like that character didn't do anything. He didn't investigate. We didn't see any investigation on his part. We didn't see him try to take down Jack. We didn't see him try to help Sandy. We didn't see him do anything except have that one sentence. It almost felt like that character was specifically existed to be a doppelganger for Jack, just to mess around with your. It's just like it was a red herring. It didn't feel like an actual character that had really anything to do from start to finish, both in the past and the present day. It literally existed to be a gotcha red herring for the plot twist of the fact that it wasn't Sandy that was killed. It was Sandy who was the killer. Who, in that great sequence, again, the cinematography and the look and the style and the wardrobe and the music, that all was really good. Like the logistics of it, the style of it was all really good. But the story of like, who am I supposed to root for? Who are the good guys and the bad guys? I don't know. I don't know. It just was mixed. I just was mixed on it. Because the person I thought I was rooting for became the person that I wasn't. And then, like at the very end through the climax, it's like the movie wanted you to sympathize with all these horrible men. Like, please help us, help me, help us. It's like, yeah, you were murdered, and I guess you didn't deserve to be murdered, but for 90 minutes, you've been the shit show of this movie. The movie has me programmed to be on Sandy's side. And so when you flip, it's an interesting twist, and it's a plausible twist. It's not one that I think that I found unbelievable or didn't believe. Like, I totally could believe when you lived her life and had her tragedy that she would feel that she was acting with justice and repeatedly so, And I thought that was kind of a fun twist. But to ask me to like see the ghosts as victims and root for them against Sandy, my mind and heart didn't know where to go. So the final reveal, kind of, at the end in the last act of the movie, where she does the sit down, and please, movie characters, if you're in the third act of a movie and somebody hands you something to drink, don't drink it. Just don't drink it. Just stay thirsty or like find your own bottled water. The moment she sipped that tea, I was like, she's fucked. Yeah. But I did not predict that she was going to actually be Sandy. I thought it was going to be a sister or a relative, or I thought it was actually maybe going to be her mom, that her mom didn't really die, and that this vision that she saw in the mirror this whole time was because she was suffering from some sort of psychosis, and she never saw ghosts or anything. Um, that her mom was alive, and the person she thought was dead was just a figment of her imagination. Um, so that and that actress that played older Sandy did such a great job. Like, she was so warm and kind and welcoming in the beginning, and then she was absolutely menacing with the music and the framing of her in that third act, and that sit down with the tea, and going after Ellie with the knife and cutting her on the hand the same way that she got cut. You know, the duality of the characters I thought was interesting. But yeah, I mean, I was always rooting for Ellie, and it was the other pieces around it that I didn't think was particularly consistent. Um, yeah, like, what is the plot of the movie? Small town girl moves to London, time travels in her dreams to solve a murder plot. I don't know. I feel like we've seen that before, but this is like a hyper stylized version of person sees visions of the past to solve a murder today. Like, there's a movie, yeah, I don't know, slight spoilers for the main plot of a 20-year-old movie, but there was a movie that was made a while ago called Stir of Echoes starring Kevin Bacon, which was a very good movie, which is like very similar to this, which is, I feel like I'm seeing ghosts, I'm seeing visions of today of somebody who was murdered, and I'm trying to solve their murder today, and yeah, it's like we've seen kind of this plot done before. But it did have style. I did think the performances were great, and I thought the music was pretty good. Not just the licensed soundtrack stuff, which Edgar Wright is always really good with in all of his movies, but the original score, the orchestral music that is like written for the movie, I thought was really effective and really well done. Um, the movie, I wasn't sure what time period the movie took place in, because at the start of the movie, the first 15-20 minutes of the movie, there's not a lot of references to modern technology. They don't specifically say when and where they are, just that we're going to London. London could be any time. And the grain of the movie, the look of the movie, had a 60s or 70s vibe. It reminded me of Don't Look Now. It reminded me of a lesser known movie that I've watched in the last few years called The Editor. It just was, yeah, it felt like it was taking place in the 70s. So to find out it was modern day and then have a flashback to the 60s in the dream sequences was kind of like a shock. I was like, oh, holy shit. Um, yeah, so I guess I enjoyed my time with it, but it's not a movie that I feel compelled to rewatch maybe ever again, just because, I don't know, there weren't a ton of surprises. Uh, yeah, there weren't a ton of surprises on the way to the finale. Obviously, in the third act, finding out that Terrence Stamp was not Jack and that the elderly woman was Sandy, those were fun little surprises, I suppose, but it made me conflicted and confused with who I'm supposed to root for and who I'm supposed to root against in basically what I would call the 1960s story timeline, which is 90% of the plot in this movie, right? Because the plot of the present day is girl has nightmares and sees the past, tries to solve it. The past is the mystery. That's where the kind of the machinations of the story and the plot move forward, is in those flashback time periods, in that kind of time travel time period. I also feel like because Edgar Wright is such a cinephile and such a lover of film and in its own right, a fan of movies as well as getting to make movies, I feel like this is probably um, his Shaun of the Dead of like 60s and 70s psychological horror. You know what I mean? Like, there are probably visual references and character references and story beat references to movies I've never heard of or seen. I get the feeling like this is another homage movie like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz was. Hot Fuzz were Shaun of the Dead, of course, an homage to zombie movies, and Hot Fuzz an homage to action films. The World's End an homage to sci-fi, and Baby Driver kind of an homage to music videos. I don't know. But I feel like this is, again, an homage to a throwback psychological horror where maybe that's why the plot is overly simple and it is maybe sort of predictable. It's like, oh no, it's actually this person. Oh no, it's actually that. You know what I mean? But I don't know. For me, I've seen so many movies and have loved so many movies that um, I really value, new things, not just kind of, better, prettier versions of old things, which I understand is the majority of entertainment these days because a lot of entertainment has been around for a long time. But yeah, having said that, I don't regret that I saw it. I would recommend people check it out. And yeah, like I said, things that are going to stick with me. Um, I don't know, kind of the dialogue, that's a lovely name. Like that repeated over and over, and the repetition of life and the things that we do over and over, and how kind of almost monotonous and nihilistically pointless it all seems. But at the end of the day, after you've aged and gone through this life, maybe that's just a me thought. The movie wasn't really contemplating that, but or commenting on that or contemplating that much. But yeah, and again, I don't know. I really felt like the visions of the mom were never really paid off or really went anywhere. Obviously, there was this twist at the end that now she's gonna have visions of Sandy because she sees dead people and Sandy died in the fire. Um, I don't know if that's supposed to be a good or bad thing because she idolized and grew out of her shell because of Sandy, and then she almost died because of Sandy. So I don't know if it's supposed to be a good or bad thing that she sees her, but I would, probably rate this movie 6.5 or 7 out of 10. Like it's worth watching, and it's a well-made movie, and it's a well-performed movie. There's not a ton new here, and there's not a lot of reasons to rewatch it, I don't think. There's not a lot of like dialogue or movie moments that kind of stand out to me, and there was maybe one or two sequences that maybe I would rewatch on a scene by scene basis. The murder scene of Sandy and the culmination of the boyfriend there and seeing the visions and her reflection in the knife, like that was a really well constructed couple of minutes of the movie. And then the third act climax with the fire and Sandy attacking her and seeing the flashback of the stairs and feeling the drug effects of the tea that she shouldn't have drank because it was the third act of the movie. So a lot to appreciate here, not a lot to want to kind of rewatch, I suppose. That is going to do it for this episode of No Trailers Allowed. Let me know what you thought of this movie. Spoiler free, of course, because we are very spoiler averse around here. If you want to discuss spoilers, please give a healthy spoiler warning, whether you are commenting or you are emailing me. Again, that email address is notrailersallowed@gmail.com for any questions, comments, or suggestions. I would love to hear from you. For more episodes of this podcast, you can visit my website, superjersh.com. You can get this podcast early and ad-free by supporting me on patreon.com/superjersh. I'm on Twitter at NoTrailersPod. I'm on Instagram at NoTrailersAllowed. I do have a free public Discord that you can join. I also have a YouTube channel dedicated to No Trailers Allowed. Both of those links are in the show notes, so please check them out. I also make music content on youtube.com/superjersh where I react to and talk about music. I also stream games on twitch.tv/jershplays, and I have a dedicated YouTube channel that is almost at 100 subscribers over there, so please check that out as well. Again, that link is in the show notes. If you want to listen to this, if you are listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, subscribe where you can, a quick review. It really helps the algorithm and really helps spread the word. The internet is a crowded place after all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. Until next time.